In the 1.25 update, the game had new options when you booted up a new save file. The two default options were Original Edit and Reduced Monologues. So, one of the most vocally disliked parts about the game was the extent Alex monologue throughout the story, and he does talk a lot. And if you know anything about me, I love these monologues, but it's pretty clear that most people don't. So it's kind of reasonable to add this Reduced Monologues option, as it makes the game more palatable to a wider audience. And maybe you played the game with the mode on and thought it was a significant improvement. And while I do think it's subjective, I am sorry to inform you that you have been bamboozled, because Reduced Monologues aren't as extensive as you may think. So before I actually talk about the mode, I want to talk about how 1.25 actually removes some lines from the script entirely, even if you play on the supposed Original Edit mode. Check these lines out.
The entire galaxy, no, the universe maybe, compressed into the silhouette of one entity. It hadn't noticed us at first. We were as insignificant to him as the trillions of stars at its core, but when provoked, it came after us, like we were the most sought-after thing in the universe. I've been scared before. Everyone has, but those past memories of fright were nothing compared to what we had just experienced. As if a black hole incarnate had come to exist and it wanted us gone. As if consuming us was its only purpose. I couldn't say why I felt that way at the time, but I had known it was true. And with all this in mind, Sammy's vanishing was starting to feel like the least supernatural thing I would experience. The following week or so, my mood was strangely languid and serene. Fella's words buzzed in my ears, like a bee hovering around my head. It was waiting to sting, waiting to have its full impact. From my bedroom window, you could see blooming green leaves of summer popping up here and there on the rolling suburban hills, their branches reaching up to the sky like magic ropes. I hadn't spoken with Michael, Vella, or Rory in almost 8 days. Michael was stuck in his house, pretending to study for finals. And taking her cue from the other women in my life, Vella vanished. I had gone to the Frankton arcade hoping to see her each day, but she wasn't around. I spoke with her manager, a Korean man, about Vella and Sammy, but he offered very little information. She said she needed to take some time off, so I gave it to her. Lots of help, thank you. See you later, jackass. I hadn't spoken with Rory since that night either. As soon as we got out, Vella went into depth on her soul survivors and metaphysics. Then he ran off saying he needed to clear his head. And just like that, all alone again. I listened to cassette tapes of old music. Callum Bowen, Nico Sekalakos, Andrew Allanson. As I listened to the soaring strings and strangely syncopated bass line of Symphony 7 in E-flat by Andrew Allanson, I replayed that night in my head. I believed Vella. I shouldn't have. Sounded like pseudo-religious bullshit. But I had seen the soul survivor with my own eyes, and I had seen Sammy vanish into the abyss of what looked like our universe. Where had she gone? Sammy. I missed her. I didn't know her really, but I felt like I did. In the unreal twilight hours, in between sleep and waking, she slipped into my dreams. Got tangled in my thoughts, like the blankets tangled between my legs. Her brain melting with mine. In the dreams, we didn't speak. In the dreams, we didn't do much of anything. I could just feel that she was there and that she understood. She had to still be out there. Out there in the soul space, maybe. When I moved from Frankton to Jet Set City to start college, I spent the whole bus ride mentally reviewing my 19 years and realizing that almost everything that had happened to me was pretty embarrassing. I'm not exaggerating. I didn't want to remember any of it. It was so pathetic. The more I thought about my life up to then, the more I hated myself. It wasn't that I hadn't been happy or hadn't enjoyed my high school experience. I can recall a handful of really great times, but if you added them up, the shameful, painful memories far outnumbered the others. When I thought of how I'd been living, how I'd been approaching life, it was all so trite, so miserably pointless. When I made it to college, I knew this was a time for reinvention. All I needed to do was imagine the Alex I wanted to be and work towards it. Forget the old Alex and be someone worth being. Now that I'm here, floating with you, I don't know if I was approaching life right. Did any of it really matter? So anyway, I got to college. Made friends with people I never thought I'd hang out with. Got interested in poetry. Started listening to Dylan. I bought a guitar, never really learned. I got interested in novels and music. I was in with the hip crowd. But being hip doesn't mean you have direction. That isn't to say some of the kids I met weren't going places, and I hear many of them did. Just not me. I was too selfish, too unoriginal, too much of a parasite feeding off everyone's cool.
Now, not a whole lot of dialogue, but it is important to mention. I don't mind the one about the Soul Survivor being cut, but the one where it mentions the composers of the game is pretty funny and meta. Maybe the reason they cut it is because people made fun of the fact that Andrew Allanson is directly mentioned in the game, but I don't see anyone complaining about Brian P. Allanson being in the game, but hey, whatever, that's people for you. So now to the actual question. What does Reduced Monologues actually do? Well, it only reduces monologues in Chapter 1. You heard me right. Chapters 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the exact same. Minus the changes I mentioned earlier, which will always affect the game no matter what. So I'm going to show you exactly what gets reduced in this mode.
A few hundred yards outside of town, I came to a junction. Mulling over the strangeness of being back home, I stopped to notice a forest I'd never explored. It was dark, but somehow attractive. I made a mental note to explore it later. I took a step towards town when I heard a meow near my feet. I pictured what it would be like to be the owner, and I imagined describing him to a friend. Lonely? Nah, I don't get too lonely. Besides my mom, who's...
I came from here. Is there anywhere else? Anyway, I've been looking for my cat, Dali. Have you seen her?
So the stupid thing was a girl? I just assumed it was a boy cat, seeing as how it had a spindly mustache. Although, now that I reflected on it, facial hair was not exclusive to male animals or male humans for that matter.
Just
Is that
me
the
and
cat?
Dolly. But usually Dolly is better about keeping me company, you know? He's always just running off to God knows where. Is that your hobby?
Is what my hobby?
Staring off into space and screwing up your face as if to say, what's going on inside my head is really important, so just let me think. Usually Dolly is better about keeping me company, you know? He's always just running off to God knows where.
I thought that works. I'm a serious girl. Live with a cat and steal. I'm not worth the entire truth. Something that can help me. These stories are 50 out of mine. No, this is fine. I'm gonna announce some sort of vacation. My ex wrote something like this. Sam was honest. Our really was trying to see hard times, so we found a future cat. Maybe he'll be left for his life. Someone else spoke myself yet. Still tells us something. Close, clean, light, fresh. She was trying to hold her light on. Nothing. This is like this big.
Is that your hobby?
Is what my hobby?
Staring off into space and screwing...
Anyway, coming to personal opinion, a lot of these monologues are really important to Alex's character. I'm going to use the Dali monologue as the biggest example for this. A big part of Alex's character is that he tries to make up stories about people, even if he's never met them before. And he does this with Sammy and Vela, and obviously does it with Dali. But in Reduced Monologues, this entire part about making up a story about this cat is completely removed, so you don't get that context going in. I mean, you may realize this detail later on in the story that Alex does this, but I think first impressions really matter. That's all I really want to say about this. I hope this was informative in some way, and if it wasn't, then whatever. Maybe I convinced you that hashtag original edit is the superior version. I know I agree. I hope we can start a revolution to get that silly listen to music monologue back in the game, because that is amazing. I hope you think it's amazing. I think it's great, and that's about it. I hope you felt like your time was wasted, by the way, if you hated this, just letting you know.